All right, I want to welcome everyone to the Light Board meeting for May 8th, 2024. And we will get right into it. Our next meeting is, need the glasses because I'm getting old. Uh, our next meeting is June 12th, so I don't see a meeting for later in May, so it'll be June 12th. Is that correct, Jason?
Yep.
Okay. And we have some minutes to review. Warren, would you like to go over the minutes that we had available to review? Oh, I think you're muted, Warren.
Just a sec. Yeah,
There we
we have 5 sets of minutes that were sent out to review. 3 sent the first time, and John made a few good edits to those, and 2 I sent out this last weekend. And I'm hoping folks are willing to vote on all of them. If we do that, we're pretty close to being caught up.
All right.
I don't know if anybody has any comments on them or whether folks are indeed willing to vote on all of these.
John, you're muted as well. And feel free to leave yourself unmuted if you're a board member.
Yeah, so I looked at the second set of minutes and had no comments, so they look fine to me.
All right. Any other comments on the minutes? Have you had a chance to review them? Do you want more time? I got shaking heads, yes. No, we don't want more time. All right. Could I have a motion to approve the meeting, the minutes for November 15th, March 13th, April 12th, and Warren, what were the latest two?
But November 15th, December 13th, February 14th, March 13th, April 10th.
Okay. And do I have a second on the motion for approval? I see Alice. Great. Warren,
Yes.
Bianca, do you want to unmute and
Yes, yeah.
you approve? Great. John,
Yes.
Alice. I see a nodding yes, and I agree as well. So 5 sets of minutes approved. And Warren, how does that put us with our backlog of minutes?
I think we're pretty close to caught up. Karen or Jason could tell me if we've missed any. I mean, I don't offhand
There,
notice anything that we don't have.
yeah, there's a second meeting in December, and then January's halfway done. So before our next meeting, we'll have those done plus the meeting, our last meeting, and then we also had an executive session, so there'll be some executive session minutes
Oh, right.
to approve, but not necessarily release. That's up to the board's discretion.
Excellent. All right. Well, moving on to our first, we're going to do the election of officers next. So I don't remember doing this last time. So how do we normally proceed, Jason, with electing officers?
Yeah, I mean, it's often a discussion. There's typically a nomination of somebody to serve as clerk and somebody to serve as the chair, and then open for discussion, and then a motion and a vote.
Okay. Well, I would like to nominate a couple people, if that's all right. I've talked to Warren about being chair. He is currently clerk. And John would be a great clerk going forward. Does anyone else want to nominate somebody or suggest an alternative? I don't see any objection. do the two people involved, John and Warren, Warren, do you mind taking over the chairship?
No, that would be okay. But what I would like, if we vote on this, to vote to make this effective after today's meeting.
Can do. That logically makes sense as I set the agenda. John, do you have any objections to being clerk?
Carol, can you unmute John?
Yeah,
I do not.
great. And John, feel free to leave yourself unmuted. It tends to be a little easier just because the protocols for the Zoom bombing.
Got
Do you have your hand raised for a comment? No? Okay.
No.
All right. So I would entertain a motion. As current chair, I can't make motions. So Alice, would you mind making a motion for Warren to be chair?
Yep, I move that we nominate Warren to be chair of the Concord Municipal Light Plan Board, effective after this meeting.
Great. Do I have a second? I see John's
Second.
hand up. All right. All those in favor, well, I have to do a roll call because we're on Zoom. Bianca. Hi. I see a waving hand.
There we go.
All right,
Yes,
great. And feel free to leave yourself unmuted. It tends to,
I just have a sick child at home, so.
Understood.
I'm trying to avoid the noise.
okay. Alice.
Yes.
Nomination on Warren being chair.
Yes.
Yes. John,
Yes.
and I agree as well. And Warren,
Yes.
great. So Warren will be chair starting for our next meeting. John, I need a nomination for John to be clerk.
I move that we nominate John as clerk of the Concord Municipal Light Board meeting going forward as after today's meeting. Yes, after today's meeting?
Yep. Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
Bianca. I got a thumbs up from Bianca. Warren,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
and I agree as well. So we have our new officers starting at the beginning of the next meeting, which would be Warren as chair and John as clerk. All right. Now we're on to the director's update. Jason, take it away.
Thank you. We do have an agenda topic on this later, but I really wanted to mention that town meeting overwhelmingly supported the Article 1 at special town meeting, which was our request for borrowing authorization for utility scale energy storage. So I'm super excited about the outcome of that and the discussion that led up to it. And I just really want to thank everybody who was involved because it was such a team effort to get that over the finish line. So thank you all who participated. We have some really terrific news that we're able to close out 2023 with 100% clean energy through our final purchase of 2023 renewable energy certificates. This beats 2022, which was at 99%, which we were trying to get there, but close. So thank you, Laura, for all of your efforts on achieving that milestone. That's really nice to have meeting the community's goals in that way. I'm going to discuss this later during our project updates, but the light plant underwent a 2-day assessment from Aegis, which is the Associated Electric and Gas Insurance Services group, and they are our reinsurer that kind of covers large losses that exceed our other insurance. They do these assessments for many of their clients, but this is something that we sought out and wanted to see how we did, and they kind of look at everything from call handling to our distribution system and substation. So Laura and Joe and Jeff and Mike and Carol and Carol's team, they all spent a lot of time with the assessor to take a look at a variety of things. We're going to be getting a report on this and then be able to take actionable items to make some improvements. But overall, it went very well. Staff were very receptive to this, and the person who came out was just excellent and really spoke our language. So it was just such a positive experience, but a lot of work went into this. There were months of preparation and discussions among the team to prepare and get kind of the pre-assessment, information together. And then just a lot of time during the assessment. And then we'll spend some more time to talk about it after the fact. So, but this is just one of those things that feels good when people embrace this and they actually want to look for areas to improve. So it just was a great experience. So I thank everyone involved. The level 2 charger that used to be at the ride out, that was replaced by 2 level 3 chargers, is now operational at the Stowe Street parking lot between the library and the Umbrella Arts Center. So we have another car charger downtown, which is good. So the engineering team, the line crew, and our electrician Marty all worked to get that installed. For the level 3 chargers at the ride out, we did get some QR codes that are now affixed to the units, and we're getting some additional labeling and signage there. What that enables people to do is with the QR codes or with the app, they can now use the time of use rates the board set. So the last thing that we need to do is disable the credit card reader, because that is the piece that makes it impossible to do the rates that the board set. So we're working with the flow on disabling the credit card reader. We'll just replace it with signage so people can pay with a variety of other ways. But the reader itself is the thing that was not allowing us to set those rates. So thank you to Joe and the engineering operations team and the EV working group and everybody who helped with improve the flow chargers. I wanted to thank the Power Supply and Energy Management Division for sending out postcards to every person who is using oil heating to mention our heat pump program. So we still do have those heat pump coaches on staff now, and they're doing a terrific job at helping people sort of size their system and understand the benefits of using electric powered heat pumps. The staff also had a table at the Cooler Concord Climate Festival on April 20th, and I appreciate their efforts there. There have been multiple conversations about potential solar development in Concord the past month, most notably the development that's going to replace the paparazzi location there on Elm Street, and then also the 300 Baker Ave. So 300 Baker Ave, there's going to be a large 40B development there called Novo. And the owners of the current 300 Baker Ave are the ones actually doing the development. And so we've been working with them about conversations of solar and battery storage for a little while now. And now they've kind of wanted to talk about this as a holistic approach because they're going to need to move their current electric switch gear. So we had some good conversations about that and about their willingness and approach to adding solar and battery storage. They're also going to be building a pretty large parking garage, and they're going to be equipping the parking garage with the possibility of canopy for solar, but they're not necessarily doing it now. So they're just preparing down the road that if they ever want to do that, they're going to kind of run the conduit and make sure the foundation is strong enough to hold some canopy solar. And yeah, I think the battery storage article, definitely helps us with being able to address our solar saturation issue in the future, but we've got to figure out how we're going to get there. Regarding the middle school solar project, just a couple updates. Tomorrow, we're going to be going before the ZBA for the variance. Council will be there to assist us. We don't anticipate any problems. The reason for the variance is that corners of the foundations of our canopies go into the setback. And so we just need to make sure that the ZBA gives us a waiver to be able to do that. There was actually one entire canopy that was in the setback, and that was removed a long time ago from planning purposes because there were concerns about it being far too close. But the school's already received a variance for their parking lot that goes into the setback, so we don't anticipate this being an issue because it doesn't extend any further into the setback than their parking lot does. We're also getting ready to go out to bid for the solar and the battery there at the middle school. So working with Mary Bolso and then the rest of the team to figure out what our final steps are before we're ready to actually put an RFP out for that project. For the advanced metering system rollout, we crossed a huge milestone yesterday by hitting 50% of residential meters installed. The staff and our teams have installed 3,579 meters, and just I'm incredibly proud of the work they're doing. Each one of those is a battle and somebody who's losing power that needs to be explained the situation. And they dealt with rusted meter sockets or jammed gear, failing or rotten wood. There's problems everywhere, and they've just persevered and done a fantastic job. Our in-house electrician, Marty, has also done 128 load control relays, which are the devices that allow us to sort of throttle some of their hot water heaters or the ESS heaters and things. So I think there's about 350 to 400 of those. So we're making good progress on that. Our estimated completion date, if we continue at the current pace, is early November of this year. But we're hopeful that the weather holds out, and we are also able to use 2 crews more days where Carol's having some of the CSRs help out with the process to prepare, because we really couldn't even keep up with the installers. They're doing such a great job. So just fantastic work for Carol and her team. The audit field work wrapped up for the financial audit. CMLP gets a financial audit just like the town does, and we're waiting for some journal entries from the town before we can kind of close out the current steps that we're on. The town underwent a major financial system migration in October of last year, so kind of in the middle of the fiscal year for the town. And so and also our fiscal year. So we're just trying to let them catch up, because they hadn't closed fiscal 23. And so we have to wait for that process to be completely closed so they can do all their journal entries. And then the auditors can just make sure that the town's finances match with the CMLP finances. And then Brian, I did send you something that you'll have to send back, and I've got a questionnaire too. But I met with the auditors. They're great. They're from Markham. So if you guys get any emails from Markham, that is our auditing firm. The
Yeah.
decorative streetlights have been returned to service and after undergoing repairs. So thank you to our warehouse employee, Josh, who actually replaced all the clips and added the safety cables to those lights. I don't know that we've got 100%. I think there might be a couple that we were waiting for because they were challenging to get to. But as soon as we complete this, we'll send out a news and notices to everybody, and then we'll reach out to the bridge and see if they can do an article covering the return to the streetlights for everybody. I want to thank Eric Sims. He's helping coordinate a sustainability roundtable. It's going to take place on Wednesday evening, June 5th at 7 p.m. at the Townhouse. So he's looking for participation from at least one member of some key boards, and the light board is on that list. I'm going to send you guys an email that kind of outlines the groups that he's looking for to participate. And these are just, I don't know exactly the interval, but maybe a few times a year. Just to kind of align. There's a lot of different boards and committees and staff that are responsible for dealing with sustainability. And I think this is just the goal is to align everybody's efforts and kind of be aware of what other people are doing. I only had one more. Do you want to ask a question now, Laura, or do you want me to give my one more? Okay. Carol, can you unmute Laura?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jason, I do believe that Sustainability Roundtable is actually scheduled for June 6th.
Oh, thank you.
Thursday, June 6th at 7 p.m.
Eric is on the call. Eric, can you raise your hand if that's wrong or right? Okay, thank you. I'll forward the email to the board. They can look at it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I had sent the email out yesterday. Yeah, about the June 6th date. It turns out we might need to tweak that a little bit. So unfortunately, but yeah, so we're definitely shooting for the middle of June, and yeah, we would love to have representation from the light plant and the light board at that meeting. So I'll be following up very shortly. We just had a couple things on the back end change regarding the date, so I'll get that information out as quickly as possible.
Okay, so early to mid-June is fair. Date to be determined soon.
Yes.
Great. We went live with our customers.
Oh, I think you got muted, Jason.
Thank you. We went live with our customer survey since we last met, and we've already got over 239 completed surveys. We're working on other ways to get this information out, and I believe the survey is open until early June. You can go to concordma.gov/CMLP survey to get that's kind of a redirect to get to the actual survey. Great Blue is the company that's doing it, and I'm eager to see the results of the survey and see what we can learn about people's perceptions and what we can do to improve our services. So that concludes my director's update.
Great. I wanted to ask that a future board topic be the middle school bid. Just to go over that, to make sure everybody has the latest information on what that bid looks like and what we're actually requesting be built. Because small changes happen over time and it would be good to check in.
Absolutely.
Also, I'm very happy to see that we're going to have the same rate on the 2 level 3 chargers. And I'm very excited about the meter progress because I know that's a slog to touch every meter in town. And to be 50% done is good progress. Warren.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Jason, the level 3 charges, how does the use of those compare to what we budgeted?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think, Laura, would you know the answer to that question? When you say budget, the purchase price of them, and or are you referring to
No,
getting
no,
some
we
information?
budgeted a certain amount of revenue from them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think originally the goal was to make sure that they were like cost neutral because we knew that we were going to have to replace them after a certain amount of time. So we wanted to collect a certain amount of revenue to, put in a bucket to basically replace them, maintain them, and everything else. Laura, do you know if we have any revenue estimates, or Matt? I don't know if Matt's on the call. Yeah, Matt's on the call. I don't know. It's pretty early. I know they've been used. I know we're seeing activity. I just don't know the exact level, but I could probably get something to you guys in writing later today or tomorrow, just on roughly where we are. And
No rush. It could
yeah,
wait to the
yeah,
next board meeting too.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll get that for you.
It would be nice. I know we've had a rough start with the rates being different and Tesla's trying to charge there and having trouble. So it would be good to get not only the numbers but some context on operational uptime. Laura, do you want to add to that? Can you unmute Laura? Feel free to stay unmuted, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I did want to just clarify that we did not set the rates at the level 3 charger with an idea towards collecting sufficient revenue to pay back our investment. If you recall, we set them to be competitive. We set the 30 cents at the lowest rate to be an attractive rate, right? The middle tier was kind of about what other level 3 chargers were charging. And then the highest tier rate, should anybody be charging during that time, will definitely help us pay things back. But I just wanted to remind people that we didn't actually say, okay, we need to collect X dollars per year, and we think utilization is going to be Y, and so therefore the rate is going to be this. We took a different approach. So I just want to remind people of that.
Yeah. It'd be good to see the volume of
Yeah, we
traffic.
can definitely get that for you.
Yeah.
Just don't have it at our fingertips.
Yep. John, you've been very patiently waiting. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just want to acknowledge the great job that Jason did and Brian did, kind of communicating at town meeting as well as throughout the whole process, the benefits of the energy storage project. It was very nuanced and really well delivered. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I personally was surprised at the level of detail the public was asking for questions. In past years, the level of discourse wasn't that technical. So I was happy that we were able to answer as many questions as we did. Any other questions related to the director's update? Not seeing any. Jason, would you like to give the broadband update?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll keep this one short. We did have our senior network engineer, Victor, start on April 16th. So he's just doing an absolutely fantastic job. He's had a huge impact already. I was in a meeting with him yesterday with Dale, and he's just a top-notch employee. So super excited about that. We're working on recruiting a second network engineer to fill that other position. The hope is that if we can have some overlap, it'd be great to have Victor be able to train somebody with his experience. The team is working on an overhaul of the town's network because our network engineer team or network team oversees the town network and the broadband network. So they're working on a pretty big overhaul of the town network right now. As we've talked about in the past, a long time ago, the town and broadband networks were intertwined in certain places for important reasons, but we realized that there were some resilience issues there. And so we've been taking steps to disconnect those. And we've disconnected the main networks, but there are still a few places where, for management purposes, that there's kind of like ways to access certain things from certain places. So once we complete this, then our networks will be completely disconnected and not relying on each other in any way. They're not really relying on each other now, but they're connected. And so anytime you have a connection, it's just a point where there can be a failure. So we want to make sure that that's not the case. So I appreciate their work on that. On Sunday, one of our 3 internet circuits went down. We have 3 ISPs that provide the pipes for bandwidth that we use to distribute for our customers. The other 2 were able to easily handle the load, but we were concerned and watching the usage so that we didn't end up with a problem until this circuit was restored. Luckily, it was restored well before there was a crisis or we had any issues with the amount of speed that we had for people. But we did kind of take some lessons learned from that event to be better prepared with a plan for how to mitigate that situation were it to happen again. And we've long had a plan with one of our vendors to get a free upgrade to a higher service, but it required us to have fiber that we didn't have. And that project is like whenever there's a choice between installing a new customer and running some fiber for this, it's always just been it's kind of a secondary option. But Victor was able to actually find some different fiber and a different path from point A to point B. And because this moves at the speed of light, it's okay if it kind of makes a more circuitous path to get to the substation where our data center is. So we now have that second fiber that we needed. So we'll be able to move forward with increasing the speed of our other ISP, which means that a situation like what happened over the weekend wouldn't have even caused any alarm for us. So I'm appreciative of everyone's work on that. And then another piece of good news is that if you'll remember, recently the board approved sort of a credit for those broadband customers who also are on the electric rate assistance. And there was a question as to whether council required a formal rate hearing, and she confirmed we do not. Broadband rates are not subject to DPU regulation, so the board can pretty much just set whatever they like during vote. So that means that the vote that was taken before was adequate. So I've been working with Carol and her team to figure out what we need to do to actually get that in place. We'll communicate to those existing customers who will be impacted, and then we'll work that into our website and some of our documentation that we leave with folks who are considering broadband service. I'm just really happy that that program is moving along. And that's my last update for broadband.
Great. And the ISP that was affected was our largest bandwidth.
Exactly. Yep.
So, I mean, it was great that we had multiple ISPs, but getting that cable in and having the 2 largest ISPs be a relatively equivalent size
Exactly.
help in the future.
Yeah, I think just to follow up on that, one thing that we're looking at too is that, we're going to have a pretty steady bandwidth load, and we know what that is. And then we have a peak every evening when people come home and start streaming. It is expensive to pay for enough redundant bandwidth to address that peak. So if you think about it, just like we think about in the electric world, we have this peak. Well, how do we mitigate the peak? Obviously, we're not going to tell people stop streaming, but we can actually work with Netflix, work with some of the other big video service providers. They'll ship us a server that we can put at our data center, and it will actually download all the content that people use. And so when you stream, you're not actually streaming over the internet during those peak times. Those devices are sort of staging that content ahead of time. And it has the added benefit of us not having to continue to ramp up and pay for just hitting that peak. So just like we think about dealing with a peak in the electric side, we do the same thing on the broadband side. And we've already got some ideas in place to sort of work through that.
That is a great option. I hadn't heard of that before, but that is logical and it sounds like something definitely worth exploring. Any questions from the board about the broadband update? All right, seeing none, I think we can go on to the town meeting debrief on the article that went through town meeting. Jason, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I can start, and then I'd love for you and others to chime in. First, I really want to thank again the staff that put a lot of hours into this. I want to thank Carrie for her efforts to, figure out how a special town meeting was going to slide in there and do the messaging with the board and figure all that out. I'd like to thank Brian for all of your help with this, and Laura for all the communication that we had surrounding the outreach and preparation for the actual presentations and delivery. I want to thank the entire board for their support and everything that you did, and for the people that were able to attend. I want to thank Dean Banfield and the Solar Task Force for their support. It was really helpful to have a unified front and have a collective goal, and I'm excited to work with them going forward. I know that they're having probably just one last meeting, but their final report will be voted on, and looking forward to working with Eric and others to continue the carry the torch for what's in the contents of their report. And then there are countless other people. There are people who asked questions, members of the public who had concerns that were valid. And, I'm glad that we were able to engage a lot of people with conversations and, work collaboratively with people and understand their perspectives, and also use their expertise. We have some just amazingly talented people in Concord who have a lot of background in this field. And so I look at those as resources that can help us just move forward better projects. So I want to thank those people as well. We've been talking a little bit about next steps and how we're going to move forward here. I think the thing that I'm most eager to do is have kind of a long brainstorming session with the engineering and operations team to talk about. They've been thinking about this issue for a long time, and they have some thoughts. And we want to kind of just talk about kind of the main options that are before us, the locations, and the financing model, how we're going to pay for this thing. As I mentioned before, we have engaged some private parties who are open to and interested in building batteries in Concord. They always have been. The issue that we've had is that all of the existing economic models are not in favor of somebody who's really trying to use this for number one priority as grid resilience, and that there are times where there's a conflict there. But we've had some encouraging conversations with some of these private parties about their willingness to allow language that would allow us to take control of the battery when needed. And so that would help mitigate some risk. But, we know that there's a huge value in having batteries. That's why everybody's racing to build them. We've had some negative power days recently where, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, was it negative $25 a megawatt?
It got
in
close to
ballpark?
negative 50.
Close to negative 50.
Mhm.
So the people who have batteries today are making money hand over fist because they're getting paid to take electricity, and then they're getting paid to give it back later. So the financial outlook, at least in the short term, is pretty good on batteries. And I just had a regulatory call with E&E 2 days ago, and they were saying that because of how the regulatory market changes pretty slowly, that the sort of current situation in the expansion of solar will lead this to happen for the next few years at least. So that's good. I mean, we know that peak shaving and arbitrage will be around for a while, but it's nice to know that there's a lot of economic incentive right now. So we want to, number one, continue conversations with those people, and Laura's been doing a great job at getting kind of a summary or abstract of what we're looking for, so that they can put together some financial models and actually give us kind of a presentation and say, well, this is what we think it would look like. Our understanding of how this would work, because we know how, Kearsarge wanted to build a battery at the landfill for a while, and we've looked at what that would look like. Typically, they would do some profit sharing. Now, they would take the lion's share of the profit, but they would give us some profit. It would also cost us if we want to take control of that battery and use it when we have solar saturation. So we have to figure out, number one, when do those interests compete? Number two, what would the cost be to use the battery when it would result in a financial loss for them? Number three, what would the financial amount that we'd be paid from them look like, and would that offset or more than offset the amount that we'd have to pay to use the battery? So we're just trying to wrap our heads around this so that we can present to the board like, okay, this is what this option looks like. Because on the surface, you might think like, oh, well, there's no risk, why don't we just do that? But there's a lot of detail and nuance there, and a lot of reasons why having our own battery is advantageous for us, outside of having a private party own it. So, and then remember, like, we're going to be building a battery at the middle school. We're going to be building a battery somewhere else. So there's going to be multiple batteries. There's going to have some resilience there with having some overlap, but we just need to make sure we get something on that that bus too, so the second circuit in town. So I think I have that. The other thing that we've talked to Joe about is engaging PLM to do a sort of a study on the electric system in the areas where we're considering a battery. One of the things that we don't really think about is the huge impact that inverters have on power quality. And so what we want to do is make sure that wherever we put the battery, that we've studied the sort of the cycles of what that looks like when the inverters kick on, when the solar kicks on, when it kicks off. We don't want to compound any problems that are there by adding a large battery. So we're going to try to do that as soon as we can to get some data on some of our top locations like the WR Grace site and the substation. And let's see, we're also just evaluating energy storage mechanisms. I know sort of an LFP battery is kind of the front runner because of its market share and how long lithium technology has been out there, but there are other energy storage options. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for those and see how those could work. We're also working on mitigation strategies for the fall. We know we're going to have a solar saturation issue in the fall and the spring because we won't have a battery before the spring, most likely. So what are we going to do until then, and how can we make sure that we're not going to hit some solar saturation times where we really have issues on the grid? And then, yeah, we're just looking forward to getting some thoughts. And I was hoping, Brian, maybe we could kind of move into a discussion, get other people's thoughts that they have or some direction as we work through these conversations.
Yeah, I wanted to also thank Jason for his management style through this whole process. The warrant closed back at the end of the year. MCI was announced in January. We found out a little later that the amount of minimum load was going to be decreased to a concerning point, and we had to bring the community from not thinking about this and one that is a community. We've got 2 new schools that are hitting our property taxes, so there's a lot of people very concerned about spending, and then we surprise them with this article and this need, and Jason did a great job of explaining, listening, taking questions or suggestions and running them to ground with the people who know the engineers and the real facts, and then coming back and presenting those answers to the community so that we could build on that with educated discussions. I'm very, very thankful for having you in that process. And Laura, you did a wonderful job of doing the analysis, listening to feedback, adjusting the analysis. I know we had done some of that for the middle school, and we had a good starting foundation from you on that project. But then you also took that further and really helped us answer every question that the community had about that. And in the end of the day, this doesn't all this does with passing this article is allow for an ownership model. It doesn't change the RFP process or the bid process where we can look at third parties, where we can look at other energy technology and storage technology. So it's a great option for us to have because we may find a third party that works well and has the right priorities. But if we don't have to continue to wait. We have the ability to bond and go out and get this project done. Now the hard work starts. It's the engineering, the bonds, the going and scoping the project and getting it actually implemented as quickly as we can, so we can really absorb that extra solar saturation. Anyone else? Alice, would you like to make a comment?
Well, I think it's a question that's somewhat related. I know that on the MCI site that there is a solar system already there.
Mhm.
If we get possession of the land, do we have control of that solar? Because I'm wondering if that's a project that we could curtail in the short term. I think it's a fairly big array, if I remember seeing it.
I think it's like 60 kilowatts is my memory, but that my memory could be very wrong. But it was built pre-2010. It was one of the very early arrays in town, I think 2008 or 2009. But it's not as nowhere big enough to really change the load on bus two. I mean, shutting it off, if that helps with our load control of bus two, then we should do that. But I don't think it's going to really
That was my question. What
big
if,
enough to
I
make
don't
a
want
big
us not to remember that there is a solar array that's in operation at MCI. And if we're looking at options for curtailment, we might want to include that as one of them.
Yeah, yep, definitely. Bianca, you want to share your thoughts? Oh, Alice, I'm sorry. Was that the only thought you wanted to share? Okay. Bianca.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some of actually, one of the issues that Alice brought up last time. Have we looked at the contract with MCI at all, or had a chance to speak to any of the state representatives? I just think it's an issue, I think, that is worth having a call about.
Yep, yeah, so I reached out to Megan Zamuto, who's our deputy town manager and the point person for the MCI closure project. And I conveyed to her the request that we ask about, options, including, can we keep the power load, where it is? Can we just have a conversation about the control of the facility, things like that. So she's passing that along. I do know that Rep. Cataldo did get a bill passed that has an earmark for $250,000 for the town of Concord to study the impacts and move, next steps and everything. So that has passed the House, and now we're looking to see where that goes. But yeah, so we are in contact with the legislators and DCAM, who's overseeing the decommissioning of the site. And I did pass that feedback along and wanted to start a conversation there. There were also questions about, would MCI contribute to our battery, or would the state contribute to the battery cost? And I think that's far-fetched because we might make money from it, but I also threw that in the pile too and just said, could you find out if that's an option to see if there's any state funding available for the impact on their disappearance from the grid. So those things have been passed along, and I will follow up with Megan to find out if she's had any luck with those.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yep. Again, he's doing great work at running these ideas down to ground and finding the facts. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just a follow up in terms of one of the concepts that's put forward of keeping the MCI load on as a way to kind of mitigate the risk of kind of surplus solar. I have to say, I'm not particularly enamored of that approach. I just feel like from an net environmental impact perspective, it should be kind of a last resort solution. And imagine that's the case. But I just, it seems like there's a lot of other creative solutions that could be employed rather than keeping, load on at that facility. And, I guess a case could be made, okay, we're 100% renewable, therefore there aren't any emissions with that associated with that. I frankly would call into question, that
Yeah.
view, because I think that there would be net emissions in the ISO New England system. But
Yeah, and
John.
yeah, so the excess load and creating load is really a temporary solution. It would be something, because we don't have real-time visibility into load, so we have to work on margins of expectation. What's the margin of error? And so maybe after leaving the lights on for one or two events, we can see what the load was and maybe adjust to see if we need that excess load or not. But yeah, I get your point about emissions. It does seem wasteful, but we need to make sure that we don't damage that substation. That's the primary purpose. Any other thoughts? All right, I think we can move on to our next topic, which is the rate hearing for the donating the rec program. Alice, you're really good at doing motions.
Um,
Do you mind?
I move that we close the open meeting of the Concord Municipal Light Plant Board and go into the public hearing on the new rate structure for the rec program.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second,
Yep, I'll take Bianca's second. John,
Yes.
Warren,
yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Bianca,
yes.
and I agree as well. So we have opened the rate hearing. Jason, would you like to take this, or would you like Laura to take this?
Yeah, I can start. Just I'm going to share my screen to put the rec up on my screen in a second. And I just want to give the background. So the board did already vote to approve this. Council has recommended that the best mechanism to do what we're trying to accomplish is through a formal rate that people can opt into and then opt out of. It helps us with the legal tracking of consent with, doing this without having to deal with contracts, and that can be difficult to enforce. But if you'll recall, the whole purpose of this was suggested was, can we find a way to let people who are generating renewable energy certificates that are not being purchased by an aggregator, they're not getting payment for them, can they assign those RECs to the light plant? And the light plant would have to buy fewer RECs in the future. The people could get a modest reimbursement for the RECs that they're generating. So we came up with this $9 flat amount per month for those people that wish to donate their RECs, no matter how many you have. If it's a small number, if it's a large number. And so this mechanism is just going to create a new rate that will be a donate your rec rate. And when you opt into that rate, then you'll be getting this bill credit on your bill. And so that's the background. I can share now. Oh, it says disabled. Carol, can you turn on screen sharing for just a second? Laura, do you want to talk a little bit more about?
Sure. So this program is a little bit more complex than your average rate schedule because it's not sufficient to immediately be credited once you sign up. There has to be a sort of waiting period because the RECs are minted in arrears. So the language we came up with here is that customers may sign up for the REC by contacting CMLP's customer service department. And by signing up, the customers voluntarily assigning all of their RECs from the sign up date forward to CMLP in exchange for a monthly bill credit. And then in terms of getting the actual credit, within 7 days of the assignment of customers' RECs to CMLP's NEPOOL GIS account, CMLP will apply the monthly credit. So let's take an example. Let's say somebody signs up June 1st of 2024 and says, I'm going to start donating my RECs starting in June to CMLP. They wouldn't start seeing the $9 credit until the RECs from June 2024 are minted, okay, which is going to be about a year later. And then they would start getting the credit for the amount, not the amount of RECs, but they would start getting the credit for,
Once we receive the first rec, is that correct?
yes,
So once the first rec is minted, then this goes on the bill.
right.
And I think I've noticed it's about a 4-month time frame between a quarter closes.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, Brian, because they're minted quarterly, not
Yeah.
annually. Yeah,
They're minted quarterly, so 1 month after the end of the quarter, usually
Yeah.
they hit the accounts. So
you're right,
so a person wouldn't wait a year, they would
No.
wait about 4 months
my
before
mistake.
they get this, yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
Other than that, a lot of this language is really just standard with all of our rate schedules. You know, there's an effective date up at the top, and so people can start signing up this month if we approve this.
Mhm.
And we've made a commitment here from an administration point of view that we would, promptly start putting these credits on customer bills. We've said within 7 days of getting the first rec assigned, that we would go ahead and make sure the credit was on the account. So it's pretty timely for us. Since they've had to wait a quarter already, we wanted to make sure they weren't waiting all that much longer. It's only for residential customers. This is a residential rate, and its applicability is listed under that. It's available for residential customers.
Do we have any, we would have to do a different program, but is there commercial customers that are in this situation that we have? I don't think we have a commercial arrays that old yet.
Yeah, I don't know of any, but we can look into that.
Yeah, I know the Wheelhouse owns an array, but this is for the residents. This is just following up on executing what we already want to
Right.
create. It's a program for residents. Alice, I've seen you had put your hand up.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether there is a provision or whether we want to include a provision in this new rate that allows a customer to sign up to donate the recs, but does not choose to take the $9 a month and make it a donation to the town. I think there are many people that may be just as inclined not to take $9 a month.
I think when we discussed this program, we needed a way to treat everyone fairly and in a similar manner. And so establishing a value that we would credit was what we did. I know I've donated my recs for, I don't know, a good 1.5 or 2 years now, and not received compensation, but that was my own choice and so forth. I guess if someone was to do
I'd
this
be asking
program,
is whether we can have that choice in this rate, that your choice is either to receive a reimbursement of $9 a month, or you may make a donation.
I think you could decline the rate as a way to donate, right? Because I don't think it should be in the
You want to
rate.
be part of the program to give the benefit to the town without receiving the compensation that you are otherwise permitted under the rate. That's all I'm suggesting, is that we have a dual option, that you can participate and not take the rate reduction.
And I believe the program has that, and I don't think that's appropriate to put into the rate. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. This is a rate that says a new program that it's a credit donation program for which you will receive a financial benefit each month for the rec. I'm saying part of the rate, and I don't see why we can't have a dual option, that you can still donate your rec benefit, your rec credits to the town and not receive the financial compensation for it. This doesn't allow for the second option. This is just saying, if you participate, you want to give your rec credits to the town, you must take
Yeah.
$9 a month.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. But Bianca, you wanted to share.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, on Alice's point, I think that there's significant labor costs associated with that on the staff side, just to reprogram and add something else, add an option. I think the reason why, because as I recall, we were going to give credit to each household based on how much they were contributing. And then to Laura's point, it was like, that's a lot of work to all these options to be created. And so that's when we opted for just like one flat fee that was like nominal, but something. And so, I mean, we can also just say like, it's almost, I think for anyone that does want to donate it, I think just write a check to CMLP, because then that just makes it easier. From what I understood, it was significant to offer options.
Yeah.
I may just add, I think you're absolutely right, Bianca, to try to credit people based on their production was going to be a lot of work. but I
Yeah.
do think it wouldn't be that much work. I think we'd have to do, Alice, is create another rate. It could be called rate rec 2. If you notice up at the top, we anticipated that there might be more than one of these, and that's why this one's called rec 1. But we could switch them around, and rec 1, let's say, would be you get $9, and rec 2 could be you're just donating them and you don't get any compensation. Then I think the downside would just be potentially customer confusion, right? When they sign up, we'd have to say, are you signing up for the one where you get money or the one where you don't get money? They might be like, what? But that's the only downside I see. I mean, I think it would be pretty easy to add another rate, other than the fact that we are trying to limit rate proliferation. We could have another rate that was just no compensation.
Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there should be some way for folks who want to just donate their recs and not get payment. And we should do whatever's the easiest way. I don't have a sense of that. But my question is, how are you going to promote this rate and let customers who have solar know about this possibility?
Carol, do you want to answer that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I can answer that.
Okay.
Carol, I'm sorry, Carol. Yeah, can you go right ahead?
Thank you. We have a direct mail piece that will be sent out to the customers who qualify for this program. So it'll be a very targeted mailing that will go to them, and we'll have a registration form that the customer can complete online, and from there then we'll add it onto their account, and the rest pretty much will take care of itself, hopefully.
And could I ask a question, Carol? So if this rate, because the program and the rate are different, so people can sign up for the program and it's assumed that they're going to want this rate, but they can decline the application of the rate. So they can send their recs and then not take this rate as a credit. Is that correct?
can I say something real
Yeah.
quick? So I think the concern here is that your situation, Brian, you donated to Rex, and you took that step. There is a liability that we incur when we do that without a contract. And so originally, if you'll remember, when we walked down this path, we said, well, let's create some basic agreement between CMLP and the party who is generating the Rex, so that if they ever said, well, gosh, I didn't realize my Rex had value, and now I want to sue you to get the money back for all my Rex, or I don't remember doing this, or my spouse did this, or I just moved in and why is this happening? Like, we wanted to have a way to track that. So when we went to council, we said, can you help us come up with an agreement? And council said, in this case, an agreement is not as preferred as a rate because of how the DPU monitors rates and how they work, and they can opt into the rate, they can opt out of the rate. That is them signifying that they are participating in the program and willing to give you their recs. And because the rate contains that information, that when they opt into the rate, they're giving their consent to give their recs away. So I would be worried that without a rate, they would be sort of just giving oral consent that we can have their recs with no paperwork and that they're actually enrolled in a rate. So I agree. I think the best bet here is if we do want a separate system where people don't have the credit, then we just create a second rate, rec 2, and that's the same thing, $0. So I think it does add some confusion. There's going to be another rate, but we can make it simple. That we have this program. You check here. Would you like to receive $9 a month, or would you not? And then we'll know which rate to put them on.
That sounds like a good solution. And thank you for reminding me about the contracting portion. I was not thinking of that. Any other questions from the board on this? I am going to take public comments during the rate hearing on this. So please keep your comments related to this particular rate. Pamela.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. Yay, I think this is a wonderful idea. I do think that the recompense is too low to create an incentive, and that we should have it such that people with brand new recs can still give them to Concord without losing money. In other words, the town of Concord, get credit for the green energy that is produced in the town. And to spend money to buy outside unconnected RECs when we could spend money to buy the current ones is financing a lot of consolidators and transfers and financial manipulations. Can we try to look at a way of making this an incentive for residents to install solar plus battery so that we can use them for the future VPP, virtual peaker plant in town?
Well, you're drifting off of the rec donation program. This is
Rec
a rec hearing.
donations ought to be at least as compensatory as you would get from the market.
Okay.
In order to incentivize people to do it from the get-go.
Yep, we got your request. Phil, you had your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I wonder if it's worth adding some language into the rate that discloses that when people either give away their rec or sell their rec, they are giving away the renewable attribute. So for those residents who are net zero now, they wouldn't be able to claim net zero if they opt to either give away their rec or sell the rec.
Yeah. So there's you're giving to the utility the positive environmental attribute, but that's also your utility. So it is the attribute, but both parties are handling that same megawatt. So it's you don't, as a customer, really lose that attribute. You're just ensuring that your utility is hosting that for you. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, that is a valid concern, but the issue is if we are producing 100% clean energy in this town, consuming 100% clean energy, everybody's getting the attributes, and so it's not an issue. The time that would become an issue is if we don't come close to meeting our 100% goal, then the customer with solar who's given up their RECs would be getting a share of non-compliant power.
Yeah, I think you could simply state that any customer that joins this program to donate their RECs would have the emission profile equivalent to the utility.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to phrase it.
Yeah. Other public comments on the rate hearing? Okay. Seeing none and seeing no more board member discussion, I'd like to I have to close the rate hearing and then we can vote on this. Is that right? I get it. Yes. Okay. So Alice,
Brian, sorry, before you do that, could you let me know if we're going to be voting on just the rate proposed or if you are going to be voting for two separate?
I don't think we can vote on the second one because it wasn't advertised in the packet and everything.
Okay.
So we'd have to
Correct.
come back for a subsequent one. So after we close the hearing, I propose that you vote and then take a poll of the board. And if the board wishes for us to prepare another rate, we'll do that. And then we can have a rate hearing at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
great. Alice, do you mind doing a motion to close the rate hearing?
I move that we close the rate hearing to return to the deliberations and open meeting.
Great. And could I have a second?
Second.
I get John as a second. Warren,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I agree as well. So we've closed the rate hearing. Now I'd like to ask that Alice, do you mind making a motion to approve what is the name of the rate again?
The
Rec
rec,
1.
rec program rate.
Right.
Is there any further deliberation or are we ready?
I think we're ready for a vote. The deliberation happened in the rate hearing. So can you restate the motion again, just so it's clear?
I move that we approve the donation of your rec program rate that was presented at the Light Board meeting today of $9 per month of bill credit for those who wish to allow CMLP to claim the recs.
Great. And do I have a second on that motion? I see Bianca. All right. Warren,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
and I agree as well. Great. So we've established the Rec 1 rate, and Jason and Laura will come back at a future meeting with the Rec 2 donation only, no payment rate.
I think that needs a board discussion. Do we want them to come back as we're asking them to do something? I think we need to make sure that people agree that we want them to go off and do more work and offer another rec rate.
Okay.
Just because they haven't presented that yet. So, and I may be a minority view.
I appreciate that. John, Warren, Bianca, do any of you want to raise your hand and a comment to John?
Yeah, I support this proposal. I think it's one that hopefully doesn't involve significant work, and I think it provides a meaningful option to citizens. So I think it warrants further investigation.
Yeah, I know my view on it was I felt it was unnecessary until I heard Jason's comment about the contracting and looking things in the rear and customers need some kind of statement saying they're doing this, and that's what the donation rate would be. So I'm in favor of it. Do you I don't think we need a vote to
No, yeah,
request
this
that,
is
but I
fine.
think we
Yep,
do have consensus.
great.
Thank you.
All right. So we are going to go on to SCADA update. Jason, do you want to take this, or do you
Sure.
want to have Joe?
But I was gonna have Joe. Unfortunately, Joe had to attend an some engineering work at the substation. So he couldn't be here today, so I'll take this. But he did, we worked together on the notes and the salient topics, so I'll do my best. So I just wanted to explain what SCADA is. I know we've talked a lot about it lately as it relates to the metering domain, which is our ability to push power back to Eversource. I'll back up a step. So today we cannot go negative to Eversource. Eversource pushes power to us. We cannot push power to them. It's one of our goals to establish something called a metering domain, which would allow us to become a supplier and send electricity over to Eversource. And that requires some things to happen. One of those things is that Eversource needs visibility into our network so that they can see what's happening. And so that means we have to have a compatible SCADA system with Eversource's system. And then those two systems will talk to each other. And that's just for really the safety of the operations of the equipment. Separate from that, we do want to have more visibility into our own network. And it's long been planned that we would be undergoing a SCADA deployment. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. These are systems that are on a lot of industrial control systems like water and sewer. If you've got a factory and you've got machines that all do things, these are systems where you can add devices that monitor or control other devices. They can be programmed to do things at automatic intervals. They can report out data to you. They can alert you if there's a problem. So for instance, on the water system, they might monitor chlorine levels. And if chlorine levels get too low, it can automatically add more chlorine. And if chlorine levels get too high, it can add a different chemical to offset that. So we have these systems deployed today in Concord, mostly for water sewer. We've known about this plan for SCADA on the electric distribution system for a long time. So as we've been replacing gear, we've been trying to do it with a mind for compatibility and equipment that will talk to the new SCADA system. So we will be, let's see, we have a quote, which is a very rough quote that we worked with SEL, Schweitzer Engineering Labs, to put together a quote because they're considered an industry leader. And not to say that we would go with them necessarily for the project, but we wanted to understand the scope and what we would need to do. And so I kind of wanted to walk through what the plan looks like and then kind of where we are and what estimated timeline is anticipated to be. So the first big piece is discovery and planning. So the first thing that they need to do is to update all the documentation of our current network. As you can imagine, we do have documentation, we do keep it, but you really have to, because you're going to be adjusting power protection schemes, you really have to make certain that what is on your documentation is actually in the real world. Sometimes when there's an outage, you make changes to the system, or sometimes when there's going to be maintenance or you're going to be putting in a new commercial building, you make changes to how power is supplied. There's a lot of options in terms of supplying power from a different direction so that if there's an outage, you can isolate it and sort of backfeed power from another direction. So you always want to make sure that as you're going into redesigning how the power protection is going to work and how the monitoring is going to work, that what's actually out there in the field matches what your documentation is. So the first thing they do is they go to all the current devices and they get all the readings for how they're configured to work. So relays might be tripping at this voltage level or at this amperage. So they're going to look at all those devices. They're going to look at how everything is connected from the substation to the last house in Concord, and they're going to do that documentation. That's a big piece. Then they're going to look at the planning phase, which is, okay, here are the types of intelligent relays that we need. Here are the reclosers that we're going to change. Here are this equipment, that equipment. And that will comprise the actual devices that can send real-time data back to the source at the substation. Now, luckily, we have a robust broadband network with the smart grid fiber that was deployed many years ago. So we anticipate, having all that communication over our secure fiber back to the substation, which is great. We do have some, for the AMS system, we have some gateways, and so those are great junction points. As long as we can get to a gateway, we've got a great path to getting that data out. So they'll basically find out where the devices have to be replaced. They'll find out how they can talk back to the substation where they have command and control. And then they'll work on, procuring all those things. Some of those relays are in stock. Some of them might be, supply chain shortages, although that is getting better for that stuff. Transformers are still bad, but those pieces of equipment are not so bad. And then they basically come up with a plan for how they're going to roll this out. And while some people are actually swapping equipment and we're figuring out how to temporarily backfeed and isolate something so that we don't have any impact on customers, other people will be deploying computers and adding network capability to some of the equipment at the substation. Imagine a really big rack that's 10 feet tall and has huge doors that open and have switches or relays or other equipment inside of them. The reason for the doors is because they can blow open and shoot out and not cause a sort of explosion of the whole thing. But these doors get replaced so that they have more sophisticated computer monitoring equipment on them so that the devices inside can be read in real time. Now, we have capability right now to read a lot of data from our current substation equipment, but it's not real time. We're not sitting there looking at a computer going, oh, the load right here is now this. We either have to look at a readout or we have to go manually connect something to sort of pull data off of it and get that information. So by replacing all of these doors with these more sophisticated doors, we'll have the ability to read that information in real time. So then they'll have this sort of main hub of a computer that's getting all the substation data. It's getting real-time data out in the field. And then the other big piece is that power protection. So as I mentioned, today, our relays are electromechanical. They literally have two pieces of metal that are being suspended apart with the load that's going through them. And when the load changes or something happens, those can close or they can open depending on how they're configured, and that will protect something from happening. But all of those devices will be replaced with solid state devices that are digital and can be set to any level, which means we no longer will require a certain level of load to be flowing through them for those devices to work properly. So when we do that, we have the ability to have power go in both directions. As you can imagine, if you have a very complicated network of devices that can sometimes flow forward and sometimes flow backwards, you have to be very careful about how you make changes going forward. So part of it is understanding how to set up the power protection in that new world. And part of it is also training our teams to know that what they used to do with backfeeding has to completely change. You have to throw out whatever notions they had for restoring power, because they can still do it, but they have to do it in a more careful way, because a device in the past, if they had made a mistake, they did something over here and then they energized power over there, it wouldn't let the two systems talk because it would see power going in the wrong direction. But now if you have a power protection device that allows power to flow in both directions, you just have to make sure you don't create unintended consequences and blow up a transformer. So there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of field work involved. There's a lot of engineering time involved for the staff to contribute their institutional knowledge of what's currently set up, and then work with the professionals who are designing these systems to take that input and then generate a result. Then once we have everything in place, we have all that field testing, we have everybody trained, then it's basically flipping it on and starting to see that real-time data. Initially, we're looking at monitoring. We're not looking at remote control. That is a possibility. We want to make sure that whatever we do is done with the highest level of security. We don't want people who can control our electric system from outside, obviously. But we, with water sewer, I can tell you they do have remote access, and sometimes it's a criticality thing. They have 30 minutes to fix something that could, poison the water supply. They need to be able to do it immediately. So it saves them from having to keep people sleeping at the water treatment plants. And so we will look at that, but initially it will be limited to being inside the substation or inside the CMLP network for access to the system. SEL and all the other vendors that do SCADA have whole cybersecurity teams that will work on setting this up correctly so that we make sure that we don't create any unintended consequences of doing this. I have 20 years of working with IT security, and I'll lend whatever expertise I have to making sure that those systems are hardened appropriately, and we don't allow any unintended access to these systems. And then another great thing is that as we're doing this, we can work on the regulatory hurdles to getting the metering domain set up so that when we have the SCADA system ready and Eversource can talk to it with their system, then the metering domain can be flipped on. But I think I'll stop there because it was a lot of information, and just see if people have some questions or would like to know more about anything in particular. I'm happy to have Joe come back to a future meeting and give more information.
Yeah, I was hoping to have Joe get some FaceTime with the board. Excuse me. So this is a great description of this project, because this is getting real-time visibility into these systems in our distribution network. It also is setting us up for bi-directional flows at the substation and other points on our distribution system. And it was good for you to clarify that you're not planning on doing controls. Sometimes SCADA systems have remote control access. You are going to not put those in yet, but you're going to look at the cybersecurity related to those, because that's the concern.
Yep.
Okay. You said at the beginning that SCL had a quoted an estimate. Was that a dollar value as a rough estimate?
Yeah, I want to say it was under 2 million or around $2 million. I'll pull it up while we talk.
All right.
Oh, and then timeline. So SEL is modifying that and to help us complete the RFP sort of package that we'll need. We're looking at different procurement options for that. And then once they come back with that, we'll have everything that we need to go out to bid, hopefully in the next month or two. And then, their timeline is about 12 to 18 months. But again, a lot of that time is engineering time on our side. So we need to make sure that we have the bandwidth in the middle of the solar, the middle school, and the battery at the middle school, this other battery, the advanced metering, all these other projects that we have going on.
right? And it requires a lot of our engineers' time, unlike the battery project, which can be kind of farmed out with a third party. I have one more comment. Oh, this is more of a big picture comment. With NSIC, we touched every account and had to go through every individual account and have it, fit within the billing system. Now with the AMS, we're going to every meter and we're touching every meter and making sure it's safe, compliant, and working properly. And this is where we're touching these points on our distribution system to do a similar thorough going through, which is great because, touching all these points means that they're all going to be brought up to the modern standard and act as expected, and not have some legacy, exceptions and so forth. So I very much appreciate that. And I know that kind of work takes a lot of time and effort. Warren, you would like to make a comment?
Yeah, I had a question. Is there any possibility that we could start moving down this path and start planning and start spending money on this, and then either Eversource or the regulators throw up roadblocks and don't allow us to continue to pursue it?
Metering domain, you mean?
Yeah.
Laura, do you want to address that? Because we did get some.
Sure. So we have already been in discussions, Warren, with our attorney down in DC, who is a transmission expert, and he's been in the field for decades. He's a legend, actually. He's expensive, but he's really, really good. And we're also working with the ISO expert at E&E, Dave Kavanaugh. And we had a joint call with the two of them. Jason and I did about a month ago or so. We asked that very question, not so much can they throw up a roadblock to prevent it. Well, actually, we did ask that question. The answer was no. But what we were more concerned about was that they were going to ask that Eversource would require CMLP to gold plate something, right? To agree to do the pushback, to agree to the metering domain. Like, could they come up and say, well, CMLP, you need to do $8 million worth of upgrades, right, to be able to do this? That's what I was more afraid of.
Yeah.
Eversource has a reputation for, trying to ask a lot when it's on somebody else's dime. And that one wasn't equivocally no, but Dave Kavanaugh in particular expressed that he didn't think there was going to be that much involved. The two of them are still working on this, and the attorney is reaching out to Eversource's counsel, whom he's friends with and has worked with for years, as the best way for us to sort of get in the door over at Eversource and not speak with someone who's going to give us a lot of gobbledygook, off the bat, like a salesman type thing, right? So we've got a strategy for approaching Eversource, and we've got some reassuring feedback from the council and from E&E that this is not going to be a problem, but we won't know for sure till we get there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go to John.
Just a comment here in terms of looking at, as Laura indicated, right? There is an incentive for them to gold plate it, right? They're going to be very worried in terms of any reliability impacts. And so they're going to be, very concerned with that. But from a commercial perspective, there isn't necessarily any harm to them, right? This energy that would be flowing into the system is going to be, they don't have any financial interest in that. The effective counterparty here is going to be ISO New England. So that to me suggests that, yeah, they're going to be very focused in terms of making sure that there's no adverse reliability impacts, but there's no incentive for them to try to prohibit this because they're worried about some financial interest they have with respect to energy markets being adversely affected.
Great. Any other board comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to take a Dinos's public comment. Dinos, do you have a comment related to SCADA?
I do actually, which is that specifically that that Jason said that we have backfeeding capability, and I was wondering what fraction of the system has backfeeding capability. And just to clarify, that means that if there's a fault somewhere, backfeeding means that you don't have to shut off the entire system at that feeder, but you can isolate the fault and limit the number of customers who are curtailed. And along with that, I applaud Jason for pursuing the SCADA project. It's super duper important, and it's so urgent to do. So
Yeah, I'll try to answer your question with a technical term. We have many areas where we can backfeed. I don't know the number. I see the map outside my office every day of the circuits and connection points. You know, ideally, like anytime there's a branch where the main circuit comes off, then that branch is ideally fed from another area as well. So it's, I won't say infinite, but there are like hundreds or thousands of different configurations that the network can take. And I'd say that that's not super common to draw that deep, but when there's an outage, they do have several options on the plate each time, with the number of people that they can isolate, and depending on where it is and how big it is and what they anticipate needing to do. So, you know, sometimes they can isolate a very small number of customers, and then sometimes it's more like several hundred customers, depending on where the issue is, or if it's underground, or if they're uncertain to exactly where the fault is. But I'm happy to, it's hard because like we have to talk about the distribution system in generic terms because we don't want to outline specific vulnerabilities, but we also want to make people aware that we're addressing those and looking at those. So I'm happy to talk to you, Dinos, more offline just to show you if you're curious.
Okay, no, that sounds great. Is this an appropriate time to ask about the low feeder level issue that we've been struggling with, or should that be saved for later?
Do you mind waiting until the public
Yeah.
comment at the end of the meeting?
Yep.
Great, thank you, Dinos. All right, so I don't see any other hands raised to continue talking about the SCADA system. So I'm going to move on to CMLP project updates. Jason.
Thank you, Brian. This is an agenda topic that has been tabled a few times, so my notes go back to February. I'm glad to say that many of the things on the list we've talked about in some form since then, because they've bloomed into larger topics. But I do just want to highlight some of the things that people at the Light Plan are working on, because there's a lot of things that fly just under the radar because they might not be deemed big enough for a formal discussion, but that are, I think, of interest to the board and the public. So thank you for that. There was something that I noticed Carrie did when she became town manager. For the select board hadn't really met a lot of the staff, and they weren't really sure exactly what everybody did in the town. And so one by one, the divisions would come to a select board meeting and just spend 5 or 10 minutes and introduce themselves, and then kind of explain what their people did. And sometimes it would be a department head and maybe a couple of their division managers, and they would just take turns kind of outlining their functions and what they were doing in town, and letting the board ask questions. And I thought it would be great to try to incorporate that into future light board meetings. And I've arranged for some folks to come, if there's time, you know, in future meetings, to just spend a few minutes introducing themselves and explaining who works for them, what they do, you know, what kind of challenges they face, and then let, you know, the board ask questions. So I'm hopeful that we can find some time in the agendas to do that now that we've passed the town meeting hurdle. Let's see, one of the big projects that we've alluded to a lot is 300 Baker Ave. There's been many meetings with the folks at 300 Baker Ave and the consultants that they've hired to work on the solar there. And, you know, I think that we're trying very hard to accommodate their request. Their current request is about 700 kW of solar on the building, and then a battery of a size that's to be determined. They've given numbers, but at the last meeting, they were a little more generic or vague with their numbering on the battery size. But one thing that came out of the solar task force and this whole discussion with our solar saturation is the need for any future PPAs or solar interconnections that are large to allow for CMLP to curtail the solar, so that we don't have to continue to buy big batteries just for this particular issue. batteries might make financial sense and they might help with other things, but we don't want to have to be forced to continue to buy batteries for adding solar. So they're completely open to that conversation and would love to figure out how that works. And this might be a good model to use going forward of, identifying a way, both a mechanism and a legal way that we can say, okay, we can't absorb the solar now. And that would really save us in the long run. So we've had a lot of discussions with those folks, and the developer of the solar project there even attended a solar task force meeting, and he's very involved and engaged in the community. I think a lot of businesses really like dealing with CMLP because of our responsiveness and how quickly things can get done relative to some of the big IOUs. So I'm spending a lot of time, Laura has to, Joe has to, with them to try to continue these conversations, and I hope that we can have some more concrete details to take to the board soon. Another project I wanted to mention was we're engaging a company called NetWatch to add some functionality to the security and monitoring of our substations. So currently all of our substations and CMLP, the building itself and the warehouse, are protected by a robust series of cameras. And those locations are also monitored by police, and most of them are in somewhat populated areas where there's people around. But I will say that we don't have a team of security guards sitting there at the monitors watching in real time. There have been several attacks on substations or transformers throughout the country, and these transformers are incredibly impactful when they go offline, and they're very expensive to replace. So protecting them is a good use of resources. What NetWatch does is first they install speakers at each location, and then they ingest all of the camera streams that you have into a data center where they use AI and actual teams of real people sitting at desks watching for situations to happen. These have been employed at other MLPs in the state and across the country, and they have diverted several attacks on substations or electrical distribution networks. And basically what happens is somebody walks up, a voice will come over the speaker and say, hey, just to let you know, we're seeing you walking up to this door right now. The police are on their way, and the police will come, right away, and then prevent an issue from somebody trying to break into a facility or trying to, shoot at or break some equipment. So we've actually got a signed agreement with NetWatch, and we're moving forward. They're shipping out the equipment shortly, and then they'll be installing some of those speakers, and then we'll be turned on as a client. So that was a project that Dave started, and I'm happy to continue it and get it over the finish line. And once we have it operational, I'll let the board know about that. Another one was the customer service survey, or customer survey rather. I want to thank Carol for all of her work on that. This was something that we hadn't done in a while, and it was really important for me to give data to the light plant, knowing that we're in a period of transition, to sort of capture the current state of public perception toward the light plant. It asked some great questions. If you haven't taken it, I urge you to go to concordma.gov/CMLP survey and take a look at it. But it's, it was a lot of work getting it set up. The whole team vetted the questions. We made some minor modifications. We added a couple questions about broadband, and I'm really excited for the results, and I hope that we get a huge amount of participation from the public. And then I'm excited to take that data and see what, the light plant can do with it, and see how we can learn and grow and actually create some KPIs that we can start to measure in terms of satisfaction with the public. E&E, that's a whole conversation, but Energy New England, of which Concord is a part owner, is willing to come to any future light board meeting to talk about any topic that you guys want. So I would encourage you to think about that, and they've extended the invitation to have them come out and talk about power supply, talk about projects, clean energy projects, talk about ISO changes or current state, whatever we'd like. So they have kind of a typical roadshow that they give, so we can just go with that. Or if you guys have specific questions or interests, I encourage you to reach out to the chair or to me, and we'll see what we can do to get them to attend a meeting. We've been meeting virtual since the pandemic, but the light board meetings before the pandemic, I'm told, I was hired in 2020, we're all in person at the light plant and the public meeting room. So we have been taking some steps to add audiovisual equipment there that would allow us to have really good hybrid meetings. We've got two fantastic TVs mounted, some in-ground cabling that's going to allow for a situation very similar to this, but with public attending, with microphones in the room and with multiple cameras, that can be kind of a sophisticated meeting, but run by the person, whoever's doing the Zoom, in a very simple way. It'll also have capability for Minuteman Media to film events there, or if there was a big hearing or something that was needed more cameras or more people, they could use all that equipment and connect in and actually stream it live or air it on their channels live. So I'm looking forward to getting that. It's really stuck in procurement now with the town. So once that frees up, we'll get that going, and then the option will be there for the board if they wish to have hybrid meetings in the future. Plug Power, we mentioned that, but the staff went out there and met with their VP, their R&D center here in Concord. Just a great project, and just super cool to see people doing that sort of research and trying to find ways to add energy resilience to some of the clean power generation sources that we have out there. And just looking forward to learning more about what they do and see how we can support them. And that kind of morphed into a conversation about economic development rates, and that's something that I don't know that the board has talked about, at least in a long time. So incentives for basically companies who might want to bring business to Concord and invest in whether it's clean energy or anything. So just something for future discussion. And the last thing I just had as a note was the elective pay contract. So we're working with Baker Tilly to get some consulting to help us wade through the Inflation Reduction Act requirements for both the middle school solar battery and also whatever battery that we procure, and want to make sure that we hit the absolute maximum of the credits that are available. And also, because we're not a taxpayer, there is the option for those IRA credits, but it's kind of a different mechanism. So we want to make sure that we do that correctly and that we don't run afoul of any of the regulations and get the maximum credit. That's all I had for project updates. We're not far off time.
Wonderful. Bianca, you have a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Jason's comment about Plug Power, and add that Jason and I also had a follow-up conversation about continuing the conversation with Plug Power or with other hydrogen providers as an energy storage solution. The batteries, I think that this goes to precisely the point that Jason made earlier, that these batteries that we're getting, I'm sure will do the job that we need them to do. But as solar continues to increase, the need for storage will also continue to increase. And hydrogen, I know, can be a cheaper solution. It doesn't need to be with Plug Power. Jason, in the conversation that I had with Jason, he shared that Plug Power is actually financially in having some difficulties. But there are other hydrogen companies out there that we can speak with. And this is obviously a very innovative, very cutting edge solution. But I think that with some time and effort, we can find additional ways to add storage to our grid.
Great. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think having a continual investigation of hydrogen is a good idea. It has some potential, but I do have concerns that it may not be the most efficient or environmentally desirable energy storage solution for a place like Concord. There are places where hydrogen can be very valuable where there's no other alternative energy storage possibility. But at least from everything I've read, in most cases, other energy storage solutions have lower environmental impacts and use less energy than hydrogen does.
Warren, just to follow up on your comment about environmentally friendly solutions, I don't know if you're familiar with what it takes to get lithium out of the ground, but that is an incredibly controversial and environmentally unfriendly.
Yeah, that's a problem too. It's just that the issue of producing hydrogen is very energy intensive.
Yes, it's true.
I don't want this to
storage, an additional storage solution speaking to the point that Jason brought up earlier, that as we continue to increase solar in town, the storage will also continue to increase. So this $10 million
Yes.
battery we're talking about will probably have to be upsized in the future if we don't have other solutions. Obviously, net metering will be one of them, but I think it would be, well,
So I don't want to distract this. So this was an update of projects. It's turning into a hydrogen debate. And I'd like to refocus it on the updates of, we met with Plug Power. That was the update. We don't need to go into the debate on storage technology, because I know we are over on time. So it's great. I do thank you for Jason reminding me about the economic development rate and exploring that, because we want to be fair to all customers, but we do want to create some kind of rate that encourages the right commercial profile or load profile on our system. So what was the other comment I had? NetWatch, that is a real risk. It's a low probability that someone will come and screw with our substation, but we've got the 250th coming up for the town, and people might want to do something to disrupt that event, and that would be one mechanism. So getting this NetWatch up and going prior to that, I think would be a great idea. Any other board comments on the updates? Seeing none, I'm going to move to liaison and public comments. And I know Dinos was nice enough to hold his thoughts until this moment.
Actually, in retrospect, since Joe Repoff isn't here, I think I'd like to save my questions for when he is in attendance.
Okay, that sounds great. Pamela Dritt.
13 Concord Green, Pamela Dritt. I just wanted to say how I love the new agendas that have links to the light board meeting recordings and the director's updates and the monthly updates. It's so wonderful. And it's so nice to be able to see who's in attendance and be able to have reactions. And this is wonderful. And I also applaud what you're doing to go towards the new future of green distributed energy here in Concord.
Great. Carlin Reed.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End, member of the Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf, Brian, I wanted to thank you very much for being chair of this committee for as long as you tolerated it. I am quite impressed, very pleased about that. And Warren, I look forward very much to your term beginning as well. Good luck, gentlemen. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any other public comments? Seeing none, Alice, would you mind doing a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Great.
Second.
I got a second from Warren. Bianca,
yes.
John,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
and Alice,
Yes.
and I agree as well. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.